It's what my character would do. Not a horror story, but a response to a common theme in horror stories. It's what my character would do is not a defense. Because you decided who your character is when you made them. And you can change who they are at any time for any reason. The other players are avoiding doing what my character would do when they don't slit your throat in the night. Unless you're okay with some impromptu PvP for the above reason. Your defense does not apply. You're making people who follow basic table etiquette not play their characters for your benefit. Only war, flashbacks and a laundry list of gears. TL. Doctor, when a player has gone too far on his power trip many years ago, when FFG released beta test version of Only War, I bought the PDF for my local Games Workshop crew and got someone to GM it. It should have been the ideal crew. We all knew each other well. Everyone knew the lore and had read the book, etc. We had 2 weapon specialists, a sniper, a medic, a sergeant and a commissar. The commissar was played by a GW redshirt, so he wasn't there very often. Sergeant was a kid, but we were cool with him and his usual style of leading us charging headlong into everything. Our sniper, we will call him S from here, however, was the edgelord of this story. There are old grogs in a wargaming community, and then there was S. S was a living god in the community. He was one of the first generation staff in the shop. Been in the hobby since the 90s. And before that had served in the army for 10 years and had seen active combat in a very nasty conflict long before the war on terror. We all had immense respect for the man and generally followed his advice in combat matters. During a mission he would be the guy grilling the GM for details for the encounter and plan out our drills. Where do we set up our heavy weapon? Where the kill zone would be? Where we would retreat to if things go south? Slowly S started to behave more and more like a squad leader and we began to have problems. First, he would be doing things behind our backs by strangaming the GM into doing mini sessions for him on the side. Our loot had, according to regulation, we were not allowed to keep anything mysteriously disappeared between sessions. And the reason was usually the commissar/sergeant had found out and confiscated the lot. That had made sense. We thought it was the GM not letting us keep an arsenal to start a new front in our war zone until one day the sergeant nicked a relic power sword from an enemy commander he dueled with and gave it to the commissar. And that disappeared in transit. S had also killed a score of NPCs behind our backs. Between people who probably deserved getting fragged to people who were just doing their job, much to the chagrin of the Grams. Finally, he had numerous flashbacks during the campaign. Because of the regimental kit we didn't have knives or bayonets. So everyone turned their etalon to improvised axes. S was having none of that. He thought we were mocking him because he earned a medal for beating a squad of militia who were about to spring a surprise attack on his unit to death with a shovel. Edit. He did that eye roll. Between his bossy attitude and weird flashback moments the campaign soldiered on. The straw that finally broke the camel's back was during a mission to a backwater farm planet. Our regiment was there to drill the local defense force into shape for their induction into the Imperial Guard. When a splinter Tyranid High Fleet wandered into system to pick up snacks. While the battle raged in the orbit, the regiment below went into overdrive. Each squad was parceled out to babysit our trainees, and our unit was supposed to take some recruits to man a listening post on the equator. It was going to be a 200-mile overland march in trucks, followed by some hiking. Nothing special, or so we thought. In Only War, other than your issued gear and what you would be assigned, each player could apply for one item, and depending on the requisition role, might actually get it. S drew up a laundry list of requests for the group, literally written on the back of a receipt for dinner for 8 people. From legitimate things like extra ammo and tripwire flares, to reasonable but hard to get items like night vision goggles and accurate maps, to downright silly stuff like airlifting our troops to destination and a direct line to artillery support. All of a sudden Only War turned into paranoia. Oh, we are all gonna die if we don't have these. 200-mile trip into a jungle full of bugs whom we were told haven't landed yet. Sergeant, sure, but if I take your stupid list to the regimental quartermaster they will laugh at me at best. Give me a shorter list. You should really trust my experience in this sort of things. Sergeant, the Emperor has chosen me to be your leader. Therefore he has determined that I'm more capable than you. I'm going to bring this up to the commissar, who was in another state attending a gaming tournament. Sergeant, yeah, sure, your word's against mine. S pulled out his phone and actually called the commissar. And when the latter didn't answer, his phone refused to let the story progress until he got an answer. Commissar eventually called back irritated 20 minutes later, while S was running around the group trying to rally support. The following was what the commissar and GM told us what was said between the three of them. C. What's the matter S? My next game starts in 5 minutes. S. Ugh, we are in this mission and the sergeant wouldn't let me requisite what we need. C. Really? What do you need in such urgency? S. Yeah, I have this list of things, but it's probably too long for this conversation, so could you please sign this form? C. Ugh, I'm supposed to be outside of your chain of command and can't actually make requests on your behalf. You should bring this up to your superior, that is the sergeant. S. Yeah, but he is being a kid. Mind you, we were all still at the table. Sergeant was definitely slightly upset at this point. C. Let me ask this again. How long is this list? S. It's really long, but these are all things that we need. C. Get GM on the phone. I will explain to him what I was going to do. S handed his phone to Grams. GM listened a bit and walked away from us. GM. Ugh, what do you want me to do? C. Tell Sergeant to blap S with my explicit approval. GM. What? C. He is breaking in-game rules. Universe law and character. Disobeying an order is punishable by death after all. Also, he just wasted 2 minutes of my prep time. Bye. Commissar hanged up. GM came back. Told us Commissar's verdict and S exploded. Sergeant offered to not shoot him in exchange for not pressing the requisition and S was having none of it. He stood up, tore up his character sheet and stormed off. You are all gonna die. He grumbled pretty loudly in the pub we were at. We didn't. GM only planned a bunch of jump scares for that session and there were no bugs at all. Your character should be a prostitute sex slave. This is a case of something that could have been a horror story, but instead, one way or another, got nipped in the bud. Background. It's fresh Force and Destiny game being run by people who know the system and know Star Wars pretty well. I'd been in contact with the GM as she was setting up the game, so I knew what to expect. I was also super bananas excited for. Anyway, here's Outcast. Me. Obviously. GM. Female. This is relevant later. Experienced GM. Player and huge but sane Star Wars fan. Ambo. Female. GM's best friend and also a Hoogan sane Star Wars fan. Creeper. Seriously, this guy gave me a creep vibe before he'd even opened his mouth. Comb over, thick glasses and ugly teeth. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but events proved otherwise. Anyway, we start with character creation. GM lays down the rules. It's a F&D game. We're all going to be playing force sensitive characters, and yes, we'll get lightsabers down the road as a part of the natural evolution of the game. Seems good, right? Straight out the door. Creeper wants to play a Hutt. Why? Because they are resistant to the Force. And this is a Force-heavy campaign. The GM says no. He complains. GM says that a Hutt PC wouldn't fit the theme of the game, which is all secret hidden Jedis and all that, and a Hutt would be just a tad conspicuous. Besides, she doesn't have the book that has Hutt PC stats in it to hand. Creeper has a sook and then goes through every book he can find in the hope that he can find some other Force-resistant race. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. Meanwhile, Ambo is working on her character. She says she hasn't decided what race she wants her character to be. Creeper says your character could be a Twi'lek ex-slave prostitute. Dead silence. GM, Ambo and I are all staring at him. Finally, Ambo simply says no. She then adds that her character is going to be male anyway. Creeper looks more than a little crestfallen. Meanwhile, I've asked GM if it's okay if I play a female character being a guy myself. She says she's totally cool with it, and Ambo agrees. Creeper looks a bit confused. We make it to session 1, and I admit that I'm a little apprehensive about what Creeper might do. And while yes, he doesn't do anything scummy/sleazy, he's not exactly being helpful either. He tries to turn everything into a combat encounter because, what do you know? His character has nothing but combat skills. He even had points in lightsaber, even though he knew that he wouldn't have a lightsaber at this point. Meanwhile, Ambo and my characters are actually going through things sensibly. That is, until we find a Force-powered relic. At which point, Creeper basically pounces on it. We have to make a fast getaway. And again Creeper tries to turn it into a fight. Even though it's clear that we'd be better off not doing such. We get to the spaceport and meet our NPC pilot, who is a guy. Creeper seems to be a little bit crestfallen. End of session 1. He didn't show up next week, or for any session after that. I was not disappointed, and I suspect neither GM nor Ambo were either.